I've been seeing a lot of conversation recently around gatekeeping in hip hop. Um, and the old school conversation about gatekeeping in hip hop was about the idea that there should be less gatekeeping in hip hop. But I'm seeing this increasing amount of conversation with people saying that there should be more gatekeeping in hip hop. Um, and that conversation is slowly driving me out of my mind. It is slowly driving me out of my mind. So I feel like I need to talk about it a little bit. Um, I feel like some of this has been escalated by the saga of one Tommy Richmond, who is a musician whose music I never heard until this morning when I was trying to put this rant together. And just as an aside, I think a lot of people are confused or surprised when I tell them that I haven't heard giant songs. Um, but I need those people to keep this in mind. I don't listen to the radio. Uh, I don't be on TikTok. I make a lot of music of my own that needs a lot of refinement. So when I am listening to music, oftentimes I'm listening to my own music so I can make it better. Um, and then the I think probably the most important factor is that I don't give a fuck. Like I don't care. I don't give a shit. Like what's popping. Like, and I'm not mad at anybody who does. I know there are some people who feel like they need to be in the know. I am not one of those people who feel like I have just got to know what everybody's listening to. Like I gave up. I feel like legitimately I gave up on popular music like 20 fucking years ago. Like I have had very particular taste for a long time. Um and I stopped feeling like, popular music was ever going to serve me something that I'm interested in. So I just don't really give a shit as much. And again, that's not judgment towards anybody who does. I just don't. So this Tommy Richmond person who I think has started off some of this discourse, I never heard his music till this morning. So what I think has led to his contribution to this discourse on gatekeeping is that he recently tweeted somewhat out of the blue that he's not a hip hop artist. Um, Now, on a surface level, I could see why that would just be just plain fucking confusing for a lot of people. That video, the image of himself in it seems very draped in hip hop. Is it a rap song? No. Um, but also, it's like, wait a minute, did somebody ask you if you're hip hop? Like, why are you saying that? Um, this is just after his album came out and he's promoting his album. From my vantage point, what I think that he's doing by saying I am not a hip hop artist is he's trying to push his album into consideration for overall Grammy categories and not just within hip hop categories, which is a good strategy to make sure you win more Grammys if you're up for more categories, right? Um, but it pisses a lot of people off to see artists saying that, especially artists who are not black. And I can understand that. It ends up being another chapter in a long, conversation with artists like Miley Cyrus, who was hip hop for a little while, or Post Malone, who was, White Iverson, like very hip hop visually, but then at some point after achieving success, felt like he needed to distance himself um, from hip hop, and it makes people mad. And another reason it makes people mad is because that song gets a lot of play on black radio, um, urban radio, hip hop, whatever you want to call it. That song gets a lot of spins, and so DJs were pissed off that he would say that because they feel like they were giving the song love, which is reflective of people feeling like the hip hop community is very open and welcoming, and that there needs to be gatekeepers to make sure people like that who are enjoying the benefits of being involved in hip hop culture but don't care about it are left out. That seems to be the vantage point. They want people who don't care about hip hop, but are around it and reaping the benefits of it to be kept out. And so that's the part of the discourse where people are like, we need more gatekeeping. And I find that discourse, I find that vantage point, I find that point of view to be terribly fucking irritating. I find it to be incredibly irritating. I implore these people who feel this way. What I would want to know from them is, what does this gatekeeping look like exactly? Because it also has seemed to open up into a conversation where people who don't like the state of hip hop music right now to retroactively, actually, you know what? I'm gonna show you a clip. Of some people talking about gatekeeping and the gatekeeping that they not only feel like there should be more of, but they feel like there should have been more of in the first place. This is Ebro and some
like
folks
that we hold near and dear.
talking about gatekeeping.
I want to say this too to everyone else out there. Any decline that you see in hip hop is our fault.
Ours, like
hip hop collectively, because we let hip hop become this everybody gets in, everybody's got a chance, lowest common denominator, cheap throwaway. I recorded 50 songs last night. I'm putting out, you're not even.
I understand what you mean, but when you say we let it happen, how do we control that? Like, how do
well,
we
no, I don't
control
know
those outside?
I'm not saying we could have stopped it,
yeah.
But
so
because
is the phrase "we" let it happen?
Well, I think it's important for us to all take accountability.
I think to escalate that point, I think what's happened is we weren't snobbish enough.
Oh my God.
With our culture, like we didn't turn our nose up too.
Okay.
Too
I'm gonna stop this right now, because this fucking literally annoys the shit out of me. This fucking annoys me. Like, I don't even know how to properly describe how much this shit gets on my nerves. Cause like, this gatekeeping that they're trying to retroactively apply is based on what? Is it based on values? Is it based on tastes? So I would ask these people, when was this gatekeeping supposed to begin that would keep the culture from where it is right now? When was it supposed to start? I wasn't around then, but I've often heard and read about Mr. Magic at the time when he was the biggest DJ in hip hop at the time. He was the biggest radio DJ. He basically was the gate, right? You passed your tape to Mr. Magic or Red Alert. They played it or they didn't play it, and you either made it or you didn't, right? Those were the gates. I remember the story of KRS-One bringing Mr. Magic a tape. Mr. Magic thought the tape was trash. He told KRS-One he thought it was trash, so he didn't play it. Now, Mr. Magic being the arbiter of taste at that time, are we saying that hip-hop should have rallied around Mr. Magic and made sure that KRS-One stayed out? Because what ended up happening, Mr. Magic gate kept KRS-One off of WBLS or whatever radio station that was. But then KRS-One, being from the Bronx, started going at the Juice Crew and the people who were on top at the time. And he had a song called The Bridge Is Over. Are we saying that we should have gatekept that from happening because the tastemakers at the time didn't think that KRS-One had what it takes to be a part of things? And let's say, the people who, I know it was a lot of Queens artists who were on top at the time. If they had rallied around them, do you think that the people in the Bronx would have also gone for that and said, you know what? Those people in Queens are right. KRS-One stinks. He should be left out because obviously he's not up to snuff. No, that's not what happened. When NWA emerged in the West Coast and people who were running rap music in the East Coast made fun of their Jerry curls. When Hammer came, And everybody who were the cultural rap elite on the East Coast, the power brokers in the culture, made fun of MC Hammer because he couldn't rap that great, but he could dance real good. So should all of hip hop rallied around New York's perspective and kept LA out and kept the Bay out because the people in New York didn't like what they were doing? Is that the snobbery that we're asking for? Is that what we felt like should have happened? And again, let's say the hip hop community did rally around the New York perspective at that time and sought to keep the West Coast perspective diminished because it sounded different or it looked different or it somehow didn't match the aesthetic of what was going on in New York at the time. Let's say the rest of hip hop rallied around that perspective. Do we think the people of California would have gone along with it? Like the people in LA, you know what? They're right. They're right. This music that sounds like where I live, this isn't real hip hop. We shouldn't listen to this. We should keep listening to people who sound like they're from the Bronx or from Queens or from Brooklyn, because that's really where the value lies. Like, what are we saying? Like, what when the South emerged? Oh man, because I was very consciously aware of the shifting values of hip hop when the South emerged, and how at that time people from New York and from the West Coast was like, we don't like this dirty South music. Like, some of these same people were part of these same arguments trying to diminish what people in the South were doing. That's why Andre 3000 has to get on stage while the crowd is booing that they won an award at the Source Awards, and he has to say the South got something to say, because forces that were already established within hip hop were trying to diminish what was happening in the South. It had already started with the Ghetto Boys and was bubbling with rap a lot. Now Outkast is emerging to a chorus of boos. It didn't look like the West Coast. It didn't look like the East Coast. It had a sound all its own. Should we have kept them out? That's completely unrealistic, because again, for the people in that region, they hadn't had nationally promoted rap music that reflected their lifestyle. And at the end of the day, like, that's how rap started in the Bronx. From very hyper local regional events. I remember talking to Prince Paul when he was saying, like, at the time when he was growing up, like, he lived on Long Island, like, rap was happening and you wouldn't know where to find a hip hop party. Like, you would be somewhere and you would just happen to hear a rap beat and you'd have to go to it because there was no other way to find it. Like, that's how rap started. It's regional. And I don't know if some of these people remember that even when hip hop was emerging, the cultural institutions that were already prevalent in the music business were trying to make sure hip hop didn't happen because it didn't look right, because it didn't sound right according to their values. So I'm like, I get annoyed at this conversation because I think it's unrealistic. I get annoyed at this conversation because I think it's elitist. But there's this idea that, oh, if we had gone back and been more elitist or snobbish, we could have promoted or developed more art that reflects what we like or the cultural values that we were trying to preserve or whatever. Okay, so then you think that you would have stopped record labels from signing these acts? Because you can't gatekeep anything from happening in music if you don't control the production or distribution of it. Like, you just, all you can do is band together and say, we don't like that. But then what? Who cares? If there's still corporations willing to put in the money to develop, produce, and promote that music, who gives a fuck if you like it? You're not going to be able to do anything about it. Like, I'm curious, like, it's like there was this imaginary council of hip hop elders who were supposed to be able to erect and control gates somewhere. And I don't see when they would have existed, how they would have existed, and what the fuck they would have been able to do at any point in any of this. I think it's a bullshit argument. I think it's disingenuous. I think it's self-aggrandizing. And I think it doesn't speak to where the power lies. It's like they dream of a gatekeeping. They romanticize this idea of there being able to be a gatekeeping based on tastes. And it's bullshit. It's just plain bullshit. And I know it's bullshit because that's what me and the old underground, we used to literally try to do that. Like, that was like all of our keep it real, true school, flag waving shit. That's all it was. That's all it was. All it was us immature young people trying to impose what we thought our values were on hip hop as a whole. We were trying to do that and we were fucking failing. We couldn't stop shit from happening. We were as organized as you could be without money. We dressed the same. We talked the same. We had, speeches prepared. We had talking points everywhere. A lot of these people you see having these arguments are adult people who, when they were young, they were running in these same circles as I was. Some of them have gotten jobs in the industry. So, maybe there's different points where they felt like they had their finger on the button. But like, we were all trying to be the fucking weird culture police. And it was silly. It's silly. Like, are some of the conversations that we were trying to have valid? Absolutely. Again, like I talked about in my last rant, like some of the conversations we were trying to have about where the culture was going based on what we could see, based on the values that the culture was embracing and how it was going to lose some of these, important things that we all seem to be mourning the loss of now, right? Like, I think those conversations are valid, but I think the idea that we were going to be able to define what was good or acceptable or true for hip hop just based on what we liked is bullshit. And that's why it fucking failed. And ultimately, like the real big joke of it is by the end of it, our point of view, our little culture war we were trying to engage in, it got commodified, sold back to us, and we didn't even fucking realize it. That's what happens when, you're organized, you have a point of view, you believe yourself to have some sort of cultural authority, but you have no institutional power. The people who do have the levels of institutional power will notice that, and they will notice how, these people who believe this thing, they will probably spend money to prove that they believe this thing to other people. So you had some artists, you had record labels who were signing both mainstream giant rap acts and countercultural critical rap acts, presenting them with marketing. Well, when you present the mainstream marketing, it's just mainstream marketing. It's not too much concern with the counterculture programming, but the counterculture marketing is very specifically reactive to the mainstream. And these are people that are signed to the same record label, or maybe it's a different division of the same label, But ultimately, it's corporate power commodifying a cultural debate within a genre and using it to sell more records rather than actually advance or, confront the discussion in any kind of way. And so, like, the idea that we are where we are because people weren't snobbish enough is fucking silly. I ran with thousands who were as snobby as you could be. Like, as snobby as you could be without exiling ourselves from society completely. Like, it is similar now to how, like, you can be from a right-wing family and be leftist, and then you have to go to, holiday dinners and argue and fight with people. We were doing that shit when I was in high school based on the tastes of the people in our families because we thought we had it right. So I don't know. I guess the moral of the story to me is I think we should stop romanticizing power we don't actually have. I think that gets us away from any actual change or development or dealing with the issues as they are. I think it helps, like, when we reminisce over things as if we had the power to change them in that way, it like lets the people who actually had the power completely off the hook as far as I'm concerned. Like, and there's this other part of it where, like, never should we think that when we do have power that we should use it to control what anybody else enjoys or to have any sway over that. Mr. Magic could not stop people in the Bronx from fucking with KRS-One. New York could not stop people from rocking with NWA or MC Hammer. Nobody could stop the South from rising. Because you can't fucking stop people from liking what they like. Nor should you try. I think this is like, I think ultimately at the end of the day, like, this is all about staying curious, staying open, but also like respecting people's choices. We can have a conversation about anything, but if we think we're able to dictate what someone else enjoys, I don't know. That's like dictator. That's some weird dictator shit. And I don't know. I think that's the wrong way. Like and subscribe, homie, friend. It's free. Stop playing.